I was surprised by this movie in many ways.
To say, I was regretting my decision.
I think this would be something I'd show to my kids.
Oh, that's good to
I
hear.
think it's about a father's love for his child
Oh, absolutely, yes.
and a complete stranger's love for that man's
They wore
child.
really ugly outfits. Puke yellow, prom night, pale blue, you know?
I don't even know where to start with this
Definitely
film.
not a movie I would consider watching unless you tell me to. Hello, I'm Derek,
And I'm Peter.
and this is the Mog Live.
In this live stream, we don't talk about religion, we don't talk about politics, we don't talk about anything deep and meaningful. We only talk about computer games.
Star Wars, a little bit.
No, we don't talk about Star Wars. That's politics. We
very-
only talk about Lego computer games.
And we
That's it.
do our
All we
best to
cover.
incorporate all aspects of the Australian accent because we're
Yeah,
both
mate.
from Queensland.
Yeah, mate. Well, when you're talking about Lego computer games, you really got to emphasize the roundness of all things, which includes the twang of the Australian accent.
But there's levels of twang. There's like the back of your
There's
throat,
level, yeah,
full
it
on
just-
nasals.
It keeps on floating through. Yeah, talks so far down the back of your throat. Yeah, I met someone once. I was talking to them over text, and then we actually met face to face. And then I met her, and I spoke normally, what I thought was normally, and she said, "Oh, you're not Australian." I'm like, "Yeah, yeah,
Oh, she thought you were British.
something."
Were you,
Yeah.
were you putting on your Alec Guinness
European.
voice?
What's my Alec Guinness voice again?
It was like, oh, C3PO over there. Your father made him. Did you know that?
Have I told you? Sit
That's
on my lap and feel the power of my force.
Have
I told you?
The
Force. The force.
The Force. You did that well. That's good.
The force.
I do a
Hello
good
there.
jabber.
Hello there.
But the Uber.
Have you heard of the force, Luke? It's a feeling you get when you're alone and you're thinking about your lightsaber. And you have to be one
When
with
you're
your
alone and
lightsaber.
you're stroking your lightsaber clean.
Luke, let me show you how to use your lightsaber. We need privacy to do so, and we need quiet and contemplation. Here, wear this mask, Luke. I know you can't see anything. Just whatever you feel, Luke. Just feel
Put on the bindings, Luke.
roll
Put-
through you.
Now the leather chaps, Luke.
No, don't mind it. That's not leather, Luke. And no, I'm not restraining you, Luke. You must use the force, Luke.
Obi-Wan's
The
into
Force.
S&M.
The force, Luke. Force.
I'll force you, Luke.
Have I ever told you about a previous Padawan friend of mine called Asuka Tano? I can tell you, Luke, she didn't have your pep and vigor.
Hey, so on that note, I actually finished Star Wars Rebels. And did you watch it all? Am I spoiling anything by talking to you about this?
No, you're not spoiling anything.
Oh man, I think you mentioned it to me, this Twin Suns lightsaber battle with Obi-Wan and Darth
Ah,
Maul.
yeah.
I finally saw it. Epic thing. It's really a thing of magic, isn't it? They did it so well, and I kind of realized why they think that's the... But also, even before that, there was like her versus Ahsoka Tano versus Darth Vader, and oh man,
Oh,
that
yeah,
gave me
that's right.
chills. That gave me chills, and now I realize why
Patterson cut.
Patterson had it in that scenario. I didn't know what that was,
Mm.
and now it's like it all comes together. It's really
Yeah.
quite magical.
Yeah, so did you get, like, there's all of these nuances in the Twin Suns one, the fight with Darth Maul and Obi-Wan. There's actually callbacks to their first fight.
I didn't pick down. I haven't actually watched.
No,
Phantom Menace many
I
times.
no, and
I didn't pick up on it, but someone actually was talking about it. Like the stances that they actually do before they fight is actually replaying the stances that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan did when they first fought Darth Maul.
I did notice they're changing the stances. Like he sort of switches. Yeah.
Yeah. So the stance that Obi-Wan moved into was the stance that Qui-Gon used before he got killed by Darth Maul.
I see. Yeah.
And
it was so fast. It was 3 moves, but it's like precise. But the build up towards that.
The build up and the touch, yeah. So like literally he basically played Darth Maul in stance and preparation and stuff.
Yeah.
And it took him out.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I actually have done full circle because I know now what Filoni's going for with this series. With Ahsoka. He's actually just continuing Rebels. He's it ended actually with scenes from Ahsoka. Like in the future, but it was the exact shot for shot scene of that. And he's just finishing the story that he actually didn't finish the first time. So it does change everything when you think about it that way, because it's such an ambiguous ending. Ezra, I mean, spoilers for everyone. If you haven't watched Rebels, go and turn this off now.
Yeah, if you haven't watched Rebels, but you've watched our series on Ahsoka, the series, it's like, yeah, you're not. So Obi-Wan lives in the end of Rebels.
Yeah.
Darth
Maul dies.
Big surprise there. Darth Maul dies, and there's this thing called the Rebellion.
But also, there's how it ended. I was about to allude to Ezra taking out Thrawn using the whales. Right. I mean, it's very fantastical. It didn't really. It's kind of like, okay, this is a cartoon. And that's kind of makes sense now where Ahsoka's going. It's just continuing that stuff. So they had to introduce that stuff. Like, I don't know if he actually, planned it that way. Was because Rebels was quite a while ago. And like, did he know he's going to do a live action? I don't know.
I think that's what his hope was going to be to do eventually. But I mean, it's just it's I mean,
your thoughts on it?
That's the thing. Of which Rebels? It's good. Like I remember when I watched it, I'd been watching a whole bunch of crappy Star Wars stuff. So when I saw it, I was like, oh, actually, this isn't as bad as this isn't like just for kids, because I watched it. And it's like, there's stuff about it I still find very transparent, for want of a better word, but there's also stuff that's more
transparent in terms of storytelling.
Yeah, it's like episodic and it's playing out. It's not deep, and when it's trying to be deep, it's still not.
Doesn't quite get there, And also, he's got that Tales of the Jedi. Have you seen that?
I haven't. I've seen bits of it, but not really. There's a lot of Star Wars stuff that I just didn't keep up with.
These ones are basically short films. The way they're played out, they're very self-contained short films, and I think that's where Filoni really shines. Like just on a very small idea, but very emotional. Like it's got that one emotional impact, and
very visual. Like he likes to do visual storytelling and that type of stuff. But I think that. I think that he probably needs to work on, because he likes to do it that way. I think he still is not the best at script.
I'd agree with that too. But that's why I was saying what his strength is those little montages. Because in Tales of the Jedi, they're very emotional short films. But in terms of actually fleshing it out in terms of a drama, it's not really that. It's not like it's not a place you want to stay in and explore. It's like you get a hit of a
An
cinematic.
image. It's like an artistic set of imagery. It's actually it's similar to George Lucas in that George Lucas, I think, was always one who came up with interesting ideas, but couldn't deliver on some of those ideas in a way that was like as just like someone coming up with a really great plot, but they couldn't actually deliver on the story. And I think that Filoni's a bit similar, though I'm almost tempted to say that Lucas is probably better at plot than Filoni is, and Filoni's maybe a little bit better visually. No, I don't know. I think Filoni really does fall back on a lot of homages in his.
I like the way he was talking about, for instance, when we were doing our research with Star Wars, and he's talking about Return of the Jedi. He actually connects on a very emotional level as well. Like he could describe the story of, it's not the story about the dark versus light so much as the father and son connection, and he really broke that down, and he does that well in Rebels as well, like the Kanan Jarrus and Ezra not having a father, and then he loses that. It's like, really, you get swept up in that arc a lot. And then later on, you said you saw a bit of Bad Batch. Did you watch the first episode?
I did. It was a while ago now, though.
Because there's a young Kanan in that, and after seeing him
that's right.
die and seeing him as a boy, holy crap, that actually hit me. I felt like,
oh really?
Yeah, because he talks about how he doesn't trust the clones, and like as a boy he saw his master got killed, and then you see that as the opening scene in Bad Batch. That's a huge arc that got closed, and it's kind of like, wow, okay, he's not just he's fleshed out these characters in a way that's very emotional, I think, and he's consistent with that, but not so much like the day-to-day dialogue of story. Like he'll hand it off to other people, and it varies depending on their writing skills.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think there are some people who have just far more advanced in terms of writing, but there are I think the Lucasfilm and Disney do suffer quite a bit for their poor choices for people who they get to do writing and stuff. That's why I feel like Andor was really lucky to have the people who did it. But that being said, if I remember rightly, I'm going to bring it up because I want to remind myself. Wasn't it someone? Is it Andor writer? I think we've discussed this before. No, it was just Tony Gilroy, because there was another writer. The best Andor writer is co-writing Star Wars: Dawn of the Jedi.
What's Dawn of the Jedi? I haven't heard of it.
James Mangold's Star Wars movie Dawn of the Jedi is already a unique concept for the universe. It's set 25,000 years ago and tracing the origins of the Force. But now it sounds exciting for a different reason. That would be the announcement that Beau Willimon is co-writing Dawn of the Jedi. Yes, I know who, but you will understand when you realize that he's what he's responsible for. That's not just that he wrote episodes of Andor, the beloved grounded Star Wars series halfway through its run on Disney+. It's what he wrote in Andor. Namely, he wrote 3 specific episodes: The Prison Arc, Narkina 6, Nobody's Listening, and One Way Out.
Okay. I don't know the names of those episodes.
He was also responsible for Stellan Skarsgård's monologue as Luthor Rael, also in One Way Out. That speech. Oh, that's really? Okay, yeah. That's the speech. Yeah. That's calm, kindness, kinship, love. I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless place. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago, from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. My anger, my ego, my unwillingness to yield, my eagerness to fight. They've sent me on a path from which there is no escape. I yearn to be a savior against injustice without contemplating the cost, and by the time I look down, there is no longer any ground beneath my feet. What's my sacrifice? I'm condemned to use the tools of my enemy to defeat them. I burn my decency for someone else's future. I burn my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see. And the ego that started this fight will never have a mirror, or an audience, or the light of gratitude. So what do I sacrifice? Everything.
Good speech, hey? Nice monologue.
So you'll stay with me, Lonnie. I need all the heroes I can get.
But you know the language he uses, I'll burn my decency.
Yeah.
It's really fucking powerful, isn't it? That's writing.
It's awesome.
That's really
That's
writing.
That's it.
You don't see that in Rebels at all. Like that level
But this
of writing.
No, and the thing in Andor, right, is that character, the Luthen character, he doesn't talk about any of that until that moment. Like, he's not constantly going on about all his sacrifice and stuff. He's pushing and pushing and pushing people
But with
to do
that
things.
actor, you can see it bubbling. It's really just bubbling
Yeah,
underneath.
that's
He's
right.
so like
And
on
then
the edge of.
It's like that's all leading up to this speech of expressing, like, you're gonna do it, and it's like people are seeing this guy as this harsh person who's pushing people to get things done and making really harsh decisions that are getting people killed, and everyone's like, this guy's heartless and all of that. And then this is the speech that says he knows everything.
That's the payoff, hey? That's the emotional
That's right.
payoff. And then you realize how high the stakes are for him, because you don't know his motivations until that point, and then it sort of launches for the next phase.
It's really like, I love that where he says what was it? I share my dreams with God. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago, from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do. That's freaking great writing.
Yeah,
and
it's super like there's that hard, that sort of really bittersweet, it's like
it's when he's
condemned. He's a condemned man.
Yeah, and he's pushed and he doesn't talk about it, and he tells people what they need to do and all that sort of stuff. And it's only when he's pushed to the point where he has to tell a person to, that you have no idea. Like, he's pushed to say that to that guy because this person wants out and is like telling him that like he's sacrificed too much and stuff, and that he needs this guy to do what he needs to do, that he just like tells him, you have no idea. And that's the only time it can come out, is when he's pushed to actually have to say it to someone.
See, what I would love, now that I've been introduced to Thrawn, I would love to hear that story from Thrawn. What actually, there was all these books. I haven't read the books, but like what his motivation is. We never saw that in Rebels or Ahsoka yet. So there's still area to explore that.
Well, he's written a lot more sympathetically. So the writer, Timothy Zahn, who created the character, basically this is sort of like, I don't know whether to call it a poor man's version of the sequel trilogy. What was it, Heir to the Empire? That was written by Timothy Zahn, which is where the Thrawn character was first introduced. That people were that he was written as this brilliant strategist, but he was a bad guy. Like, it was never quite clear as to, if I remember rightly, like why he was the way that he was, but he was definitely the bad guy. Now, when he got an opportunity to write Thrawn again in like the current world, where you've got the origin story of him, he's written much more sympathetically, and he's like a Sherlock Holmes in a bad situation, where there are decisions for why things happen the way that he makes them happen, and that bad things that happen tend to be choices that other people are making that may make him look bad. But under it all, it's not that he's got a heart of gold, but he's also not a bad guy. But then with the Rebels series, he's a lot more of a back to that kind of bad guy character, because he's a lot less sympathetic in that, but they lean on him being like really smart and organized, a genius, so it's just tactical genius.
They also play his theme is an organ.
Yeah, I know.
It's like the vampire.
Yeah.
They're calling on Dracula there.
That's the thing. That's the difference between things like the Andor, where and this is just like no one's ever taught these. Like someone used the word. Have you ever heard of subtlety? And they say, yeah, I tell people I'm subtle all the time.
What was the original? So the heir to the Empire. What was the next one? The origin story. I might have a look at that.
It's just called Thrawn. It's Thrawn. A series of 3 books.
3 books called Thrawn. And he's a Sherlock Holmes. Sounds good, eh?
Yeah, it's not subtle to tell someone that you're subtle.
But on that note of the music, Kevin Kiner, this guy, I think he needs high praise, because what he's done with the music in Rebels is just beyond. He's taken John Williams, but he's made it his own, and he doesn't mind leaning into it. A lot of composers are afraid to like get too close to John, but I think he's actually owned it, and he's modified it to his needs. It's really quite amazing. And I can't tell the difference, because there's one episode in the last series, season 4, where it's a pure, trench run moment. They've got all the X-Wings lock onto S-foils. It's all buzzing those, the endorphins from, the X-Wings, and you see them all in formation, and then she doesn't move, but he even chucks the timpanis, that moment where the Death Star's about to blow up. He's like mastered the John Williams formula. And like we feel the same emotions, because she cuts her engines and then shoots the TIE Interceptor, this new threat, and it's just amazing. Right. Done.
Yeah, actually, you've watched more Rebels than I have, because
you didn't finish it? I thought you watched it all.
No, I just know how it plays out.
Oh, I see.
But
you don't mind me just spoiling it? I just
no.
Okay.
No, I pretty much. Because I decided I knew that I wasn't going to end up watching all of it, because I just...
Oh, it took me so long. It took me I've been wanting...
Some of it is some of it is pretty boring.
Well, since we started watching Ahsoka, I've said, okay, I've got to finish Clone Wars, did that. Got to finish Rebels, did that. It took 3 years. 3 years. Yeah. Fucking lot of content.
Well, yeah, and that was over a long period of time that content was produced too. But
and now
some of it is very good. Some of it is very good. There's pieces of it that's great. It's just that when you have to write that much content, it's not surprising that some of it's lackluster and some of it's not. I'm sure. I don't know. Is there a series that's been consistently good from start to finish that isn't just one season?
Star Wars?
No, just in general.
That isn't one season?
Yeah. Because there are
I love Mad Men. Mad Men's one of my favorites.
All right, okay.
That's consistently awesome. But you have to sort of like that stuff. I like the 50s vibe, it goes 50s, 60s. With all the music. It's an exploration of American culture, and through a very specific lens of advertising. So you're sort of learning as well as experiencing New York, and I don't know. That was one I liked. What is it? Breaking Bad. It's also high up there. Do you have any?
Not that I can think of. That's kind of one of the reasons.
See, Game of Thrones falls. It doesn't match.
Yeah, I know. That's the example that you start. You go, oh,
no,
because it didn't stick the landing. And you can't use anything that's 1 or 2 seasons long, because it's stuff that has gone on for a while, that's consistent, that's been able to maintain a level of quality writing all the way through.
The other one I love is Dexter, but it doesn't meet that criteria. It's so
It doesn't meet
up and
that
down.
either.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's
Some of
good
the
bits,
Dexter's
but like,
great.
no.
And then there's
So it's
No.
hard. I think it is hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any others?
Mm, don't know.
It's down to the talent because Matthew Weiner, he was there for the whole thing of Mad Men, and
24.
I love 24. It's my total switch off thing because
It was what
there's
was
so
it?
much of
The
it.
other one. There was 24, and there was what was the other one?
Oh, Xena, yeah.
Lost. No,
Oh,
Lost.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, Xena, you can't. You either say that all of Xena was great, or all of Xena was Xena.
It's Sam Raimi though. He's got that camp delivery. You know what you're getting with him.
Yeah. So yeah.
But what surprised me with Ahsoka now also, and also Mandalorian, all of the original voice actors they use. So Mikkelsen, he was the original voice actor, and now he's acting in life. And also Bo-Katan, she was the Battlestar Galactica woman. She was the original, like way back in Clone Wars. And
well,
they got
in
her.
some of those Clone Wars episodes, the Bo-Katan lady, phasing out again. You're going to have to imagine what I look like.
Move your face forward, maybe. There. No.
So Bo-Katan, her boss, her original boss in the Clone Wars was actually voiced by.
There it goes. It's back now.
What was the director's name again? From The Mandalorian.
Oh, Rodriguez.
No,
Robert Rodriguez. Dave Filoni.
Robert, no,
John Favreau.
Yeah, John Favreau.
Oh,
he was one of the Mandalorian. He voiced like the big bad Mandalorian guy, in like one of the Clone Wars series.
What was that guy's name? Can't remember that.
I don't know. Some random Star Wars name. That probably started with Pa or Bo or Rev or Rav or Jif or Guff. It's normally a 3-letter word. 2 or 3 letters. There's a limit to how big a person's first name can be in Star Wars.
What would your Star Wars name be?
Slap. That breaks the criteria too because it's 4.
It's a pretty good name.
What would yours? Well, that's my first name. Then you got to have a second name, which is like 2 syllables. Like 1 syllable and then 2 syllables. So it'd be Slap Pritchards. No, that's too mainstream.
No, it's too much.
Slap.
It's too British.
Slap Zylkov.
Zalkov's pretty cool.
Something stupid.
I reckon I'd be a Cad.
Cad? No, but there's already a Cad, isn't there?
Is there? I don't know. Is there?
I think there is.
I think so. You took my name.
Cad Bane, I think, is like a bounty hunter or something. Yeah, Cad Bane. Cad Bane, CAD. Yeah.
Oh no, he's the main character, isn't he? Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, you have to try again. No, you actually have to pick. You've just watched more of it than I have, so.
So the other thing, before I forget, there's 2 things. He introduces the Bogan and Aslan forces from George Lucas's original script. He actually went back all the way and dug up that lore and put it in this as well. I was shocked to hear that stuff. The Bogan Force being the Dark Force. The Bogan.
Oh, that's right, the Bogan Force. This is this? Hang on, which one's this?
Rebels. This is in Rebels.
The Dark Force. What was the Dark Force?
The dark side is the Bogan side. And the Aslan is the light side. But he brought it in with this character. I can't remember the name, but it's cool to see that. Like, it was a real callback. Like,
Was
no,
this wasn't the father of the sister and the brother thing, was it?
no, there's something separate to
That's
that. Star Wars Rebels. Hang on.
yeah. I just can't. I just can't take anything seriously as soon as you call it the Bogan Force.
I don't know that guy's name. Bendu. You know, Bendu.
Oh, Bendu.
Yeah, it's a character
Right.
now.
Yeah, I remember that, but I did at least
That
I
was
Okay.
quite surprising to me that he actually used all of the lore that Lucas originally wrote and he just chucked it in.
Yeah.
And we got to
What's
see that, you know, the Bendu. It was very mystical, I found.
blended with plants, coral like land, right? Yeah. But you still haven't answered. Sorry, you still have to come up with a name.
Well, I was thinking like something like is something Aussie. That's why I thought of Bogan.
Yeah, yeah, like
like,
how about Dozer?
like a
Dozer
Gimp?
Bogan.
Is Gimp too bad?
Well, no, it has to like slap is 4 letters, but it's quick enough.
Yeah. Faz.
Faz.
Faz
Faz
Boo.
Bogan.
Yeah, something like that. Faz Boo Boo.
Faz Boo Boo. I don't know. Faz Bogan's pretty good.
Faz Boo. It's the
Faz
Bogan
Boo Boo.
Force.
He's force sensitive. Faz Bogan. Faz Boo Boo.
What was yours now?
Boo-boo?
What was yours? Slap. Slap
Slap.
Zylo.
I can't even remember.
Zygor.
It was Zerglov. Zerglov?
Was it? Zerglov.
Slap Zerglov? I don't know.
Sounds a little bit Russian, eh?
Yeah, probably a bit too. Maybe
So you didn't see the Bendu stuff at all? I was going to ask you.
I saw a bit of it.
What were your thoughts on that? Because it's such a departure from Star Wars, but it's very in line with I don't know, the theme of the Force. It felt actually that it fit.
I just don't remember. I don't remember much about the philosophy behind the character. I remember the character, but not. An object cannot make you good or evil. The temptation of power, forbidden knowledge, even the desire to do good can lead some down that path. But only you can change yourself.
It was kind of this, for me, it was actually a very chaotic character. Like, he had no alliance to either good nor bad. It was like, it just existed. And I thought that was kind of cool to explore that stuff. Because it wasn't the embodiment of the good side of the Force or the bad side. It was just like a pure. It was exploring the beyond duality, which I hadn't seen in Star Wars at all, and like I thought didn't exist, to be honest. Because we've always had either light side stuff or dark, you know, Sith or Jedi, and to have this was pretty cool to me.
Yeah, I'm just looking a bit about it.
You might remember, so when he appears in the end to save his planet, Kanan Jarrus goes up to him to enlist his help. But in the end, he just creates this storm and it just obliterates everything. And Hera goes to him, "Oh, this is your friend?" They're almost killed by him. He doesn't actually have. He's so powerful that he doesn't actually. He's not aligned, you know, to either.
Right. Was immensely powerful, possessed incredible connections for could perceive the emotions of it. He also had the power to appear and disappear, despite his ability to create powerful storms. He was knocked to the ground. The artillery had a powerful foresight. Slap Doldrum.
What's that? Oh, that's your name.
How does that say?
Doldrum.
It's
Yeah.
not dildo. It's not
Doldrum is
dildo.
from the Phantom Tollbooth.
I know.
The
I
Doldrums.
know. I know.
You didn't have any thoughts about Bendu? Because
Not really.
we have
No,
talked
not really.
about the duality of Star Wars before in Obi-Wan, in that there wasn't any room for grey. You know, it was very black and white. But this was like a story that actually really explored that.
Oh, right. I just, yeah, I'll have to revisit Rebels to give you a bit better on a viewpoint regarding it. It's because I don't have a strong like set of thoughts about it. Like most of my thoughts were that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Some of the characters could be annoying. There was uh there were times when it did things in an unexpected way, but also the script of it was still not sophisticated. It was like some ideas were sophisticated, but the delivery on it was typical. But then every now and then it would deliver something that was quite good.
It's funny
Like
because every episode I would actually wait for that written by, directed by, and I'd look at these names. There's ones that are commonly good. Bosco, this guy, I don't know, Bosco Nung. And
okay.
these ones are the good ones, and then it flips. They didn't have enough resources, you know. So like there are
Right.
filler
So
episodes.
you could always pick the good writers and
Well,
we
if it was a
gave
particularly good
we
story,
gave
then I would.
we
Sorry.
gave Slap a go at doing some writing.
Yeah, slap. Um, the last thing I was going to talk about was the characters Sabine and Hera. Completely different characters in this Rebels. Really good characters. I don't know what got lost in the move to Ahsoka.
Love the
Something
Sabine.
Sabine, she's amazing in
Yeah.
this. She's like so independent and like really fiery and like strong and like really driven. Like you get a real sense of what a Mandalorian is. Like it's this headstrong sort of very bound to loyalty and a code. We got none of that in Ahsoka. Absolutely none of it. She was this sort of flaky, I don't know, just sort of emo woman.
She was a bit of a caricature. And honestly, there's been so much of
But
that.
same character is what I'm saying. But completely the opposite character. Same character in name only, really, is what I'm saying.
Oh, that's what you mean. Yeah, yeah. No, I get you. What I mean is the around this time it seems, when Ahsoka's being written and a whole bunch of stuff from Disney's being written. It's like they've forgotten how to give any type of dimensionality to a strong female character. It's almost like people forgot how to write nuanced characters and they emphasize characteristics of what they considered to be certain types of characters that they wanted to portray. And that, well, it's probably more than that, really, because with Rebels, the other situation, and we talked about, sorry, with
Ahsoka.
Ahsoka. I keep wanting to say Super Ahsoka. The way that the plot was written for that series started off with an antagonistic relationship between her and Ahsoka. So it started the introduction to the character was set against a level of tension. So it wasn't a positive like working of two people together. It was actually two main characters who you're both supposed to like working against each other because like she comes in, she doesn't listen to her, she steals the ball and does her own research and then loses the ball, and she's just like this, like basically making stupid decisions, not really, and like all of the character, like they wrote these scenes for the purpose of something, but when you add all those scenes together, it creates a character you don't like.
Yeah.
So like when she first gets introduced, you don't actually see her because she's supposed to be present at this event and she doesn't turn up, and that's played for humor to show you that this person's independent. But then there's another scene where they want to show that she's competitive and good at speeder biking, so she races the police. So there's another thing where she just, one-ups people, and then she tries to one-up Ahsoka, and the whole time she's just like creating
But see,
this.
just on that note, I see what you mean. But with that stuff, the character that I saw in Rebels is more aligned with the speeder bike version that we saw, but it disappeared entirely after that. We never saw that side again. Like that was sort of what Sabine Wren was in the Rebel series, and there was actually no antagonism with Ahsoka. I don't know where that came from, like what they were talking about there. They sort of invented it, and it kind of really just harms.
Yeah, it did. Well, it was because they needed them to come together. Like the plot required them to, like, they created it as an arc to resolve for them coming together and working through something. But it actually, when you added that on top of the other things that she did, it just compiled up to create this set of characteristics about. And plus, like those things that you're describing of that character, you would have to know that that's what that character was like. But this is your first time being introduced to that character in the series, in which case she's treating everyone like shit, which is what she's doing. Like,
but like totally inconsistently though. She wasn't like that in Rebels, and I don't know what they did to get her to do that stuff in the new series, because it really like they dug themselves a hole. And there was no hickey, like the guy Patterson saying there was a hickey or something, so Ezra and Sabine had a relationship. There was none of that. Like I watched it all, there was no relationship with Ezra, like there was no romantic relationship. So they had so much to go with, and they really fucked it up. I don't know.
Kind of allude, but they do kind of but that's the thing, right? If you're going to introduce,
did they allude to it though in Rebels? I didn't see it.
It doesn't matter, like, because you have to separate Rebels from Ahsoka completely.
But where did they allude to it in Ahsoka then? What do you mean they alluded to it?
Well, what I mean is that in Ahsoka they needed to establish that there was a very strong relationship between Ezra and her. That would being friends.
In the hologram, they said, "Oh, you're like a sister to me," and then Patterson cut that out. So where's the strong relationship? Yeah. They didn't allude to it.
I mean, come on. Like most of the time when people talk about "you're like a sister to me" and all of that, that's a terrible line. Like that once again is that
it's friend zone line.
It's a friend zone line. That's right. It's like I can't wait. So that's almost like hinting at a potential relationship, but in a negative way.
Yeah.
It's like you're like my sister.
So the only inkling that I got there was something more, was that in both, the one scene that they copy was she touches Ezra's face on the mural, and she did it in Ahsoka as well. So it was a very tender sort of moment that hinted that there's romantic sort of interest there.
And then they say you're like a sister to me, which further wishy-washes it. I think it was just poor choices in dialogue in the actual scenarios that they created for the character, that when you add it all together, it's instead of looking at it as a series of scenes, it just builds up this negativity towards the character.
Well, I think the reason why I asked you this, like I'm asking these questions specifically, is because in the first episode I asked you, if watching Rebels changed anything, absolutely it changes. Like, they've butchered Sabine's character, they've butchered Hera's character. Hera's character was stunning in Rebels. Like, she was so like such a like a Leia character, super, like, she was a talented fighter, and you don't see any of that in Ahsoka. Like, her talents, that's the thing that actually sets her apart, that we needed to see. We got this catty woman that's just sort of, and she's got this kid that's just tagging along. It's really sad what
I
they've
didn't
done with
really
it.
see her. I didn't really see her character as Catty in Ahsoka.
Remember in the scene where they're in the versus, she's asking for help um from the politicians, and she cattily replies. Patterson cut it out, but she says, "What do you know about war?" or something like that to the Asian guy. Do you remember that?
All right.
It's super catty. And it's not like Hera to say that stuff in this. She would rather act than fight with words. So it's kind of like,
Well, you can do that with a series. I think that once again comes down to, like writing, like trying to create a situation where, what I was saying, like it's saying you can't convey subtlety by saying to people, "I'm subtle." And that's kind of what it is that they're writing scripts that say, "What do you know about war?" Because I know everything about war. Because I've been through so much. So you know that, who've watched Rebels, but everyone else hasn't watched Rebels, so you should know that I know what war is like.
yeah.
So what do you know about war? And you're an asshole.
But I wonder if like they needed to do that at all. Can't they just it's just forego the formalities and keep the character as true to what it was, and rather than start from scratch? Is that possible?
I think that what happens is a person wants that they've spent all this time in Rebels trying to create this character through all these different situations, and then when they have one series to try to explain to people who this character is, they try to mash it all in.
But can't we forego that, is what I'm asking? Can't we just continue where we left off?
I think that I don't think you can just go in where you left off. But at the same time, I don't think you can tell people that this is what the person's character is. You have to create a proper situation in which their characteristics are demonstrated. So, which is like admittedly tough when you've spent all of these. And the thing is, you don't necessarily have to you don't have to treat all of the characters that were main characters in Rebels as main characters in the series either. So, because you're writing for two audiences. You're writing for people who love Rebels, and you're writing for people who don't know anything about it and want to love Ahsoka, the series. So, really, you should be writing for that second audience. Now, you may not be making... because you're probably getting a wider audience through the live action than you are through Rebels.
Yeah.
So what you really have to do is just create the situations where some of their characteristics come across. Excuse me, and you're creating a good story in the process. Because you can do that if you're successful in the first series at just getting some of that across and making people happy with good writing around the story of the series, then you can build on that in later series because of the success. So like, you don't have to make Hera a super complex character you can make them complex characters, but it just has to serve, everything has to serve whatever it is you're trying to achieve in the series. Just don't try to do everything, and don't try to do it in a way that you're like explaining everything to everyone and saying that you need to. Because sometimes when you condense characteristics of someone, you create a caricature instead of a character.
So in light of all of that, I see the point that people criticize now of Ahsoka, because seeing Rebels and what they did to the characters, it is actually more of a failure, knowing that how much they dropped the ball with what they had to work with originally, because it ended on a very high point of strong characters, strong emotion, and it dropped it to this mediocre kind of wishy-washy drama, like you say, kind of.
But really, in trying to service two audiences, they service neither.
Yeah,
is what you're saying.
But we got to see Thrawn, and Thrawn was the saving grace of that, I think, of Ahsoka, because it was spectacular, his entrance, and
his entrance was great, yeah.
But also like the build up and all of the sort of chess game that he was playing. It was quite good to see that in Ahsoka, but the other stuff.
Yeah, this has been...
And it's funny because Patterson hasn't watched Rebels either, so I don't even know if he knows, but he knew it had to go just from a filmmaker's point of view.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Well, he knew that like there were some things that he had to do. One, he had to make some of the characters more relatable. And really, he showed that the character who needed to be sacrificed the most was Sabine.
Yeah.
Because she was made a main character in the series. As much a main character as Ahsoka.
Yeah.
When she shouldn't have been. Because it wasn't about her.
The end line in Rebels is, Sabine, you know what to do, and she's questioning, what do I have to do? And it's like the big open loop. And it's all put on her. It wasn't put on Ahsoka. Ahsoka was a very small part in Rebels. So I don't know. He wrote himself into a corner. He kind of...
I just don't think... I just think that it shouldn't have been a sequel to Rebels in writing.
Could have done anything, eh? He could have gone anywhere.
Well, I mean, Rebels was a sequel to Clone Wars, but it wasn't, right?
Yeah, because we sort of got the Ahsoka through line a little bit, but it was new characters.
And you also got some Obi-Wan through line as well with the Darth Maul stuff. There was continuity there in Rebels that you got from the Clone Wars. You didn't have to do Rebels season 6 or whatever it was for Ahsoka. You just needed to create your own series with that and bring those characters into it, not make it all of them main characters in Ahsoka.
It would have been nice to actually explore her. They're kind of doing it with Tales of the Jedi a little bit, the backstory and her as... I won't spoil it, but
no, it's all good.
Yeah, I know what you mean. They didn't actually service it well, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Is that what some of the vibe is like with the hat guy, the Star Wars series guy? He was sort of hating on it.
On the Ahsoka series? Yeah. I don't remember what he said too much about it, to be honest. Because I've only kind of followed him a bit more recently with Acolyte stuff.
Apparently got canned. No season 2.
Yeah. There was absolute... It was
we never find out what happens to Plagueis. That would have been cool to see a little bit. What they were going to do with that.
They would have done... Yeah, but they would have done it bad. It's just like... It's like... I don't know. Do you want to watch more of your interesting characters get diminished to a terrible two-dimensional... If you can get to 2 dimensions image of something...
Yeah,
it's just you just be more depressed. I mean, Acolyte truly was atrociously bad, and look at the disappointment you have with that we have with so much of Star Wars. It's just I'm
I
really
think for me
looking
is that it's an open loop that they set up and that I wanted to see end. You know, they've done it and they've created this character now. I wanted to see how it ended. It didn't matter that it would have been bad. I could have just put it in a box of, okay, Acolyte tried to do this with this. And at least they got to finish
You're
that.
being fairer with it than
But it doesn't, you know, I don't let it destroy the rest of Star Wars for me. I don't think
Well,
that's a
I
healthy
think
way
the
to look
fear
at it.
was is that it. Well, I think the fear was that it could have ruined the Phantom Menace. Like,
But we
because
never
it was
saw him
leading.
though.
But it was what I mean is that this. All right, so after you've got Plagueis, then you've got Palpatine, right? So literally Acolyte could have led into the Phantom Menace. That was the potential. So you could have made the the Phantom Menace even worse than it really is.
But
Like,
I think
Phantom
that's
Menace
where we're
is a
getting
great
into this
film.
unhealthy sort of viewpoint that, you know, I even look at Reddit and they say, oh, you know, I'm just trying to figure out the watch order of this stuff because there's so much. And like, tell me the watch order, please. And they're saying, this is not canon, don't watch this, not canon, canon, canon. People are like really obsessed about like
What's canon?
well, just like to the point where they're not being objective and that it's just entertainment. You know, it's kind of like, are you
Yeah.
gonna really let this destroy your love of original Star Wars? It's just entertainment at this
Well,
point.
it's
And we know
because
that
it's
Disney's taken over. Like, it's never going to be as good as anything we saw when we were kids. Can't we just accept that now?
I think what it is there's a real and for me, I don't really like. I'm disengaged from it, right? Like the Acolyte, I'm like it was bad, and I enjoyed hating on it with you. Just not hating on it in terms of just like being able to deconstruct and talk about poor writing and all of that type of stuff. Because at this stage, my interest in Star Wars is like pretty minimal. And I think the reason for that is because when you think about like what's happened over the last 10 years, 11 years, no, 13 years of Star Wars, it's taken this trajectory that has been. It's sort of, I think the reason that you get so many people who like people have, to be fair to this whole thing, people have always done this. Like, since the Phantom Menace came out, you know, this is not a new thing. Like, the prequel trilogy was hated, like, for quite a long time by a lot of the fan base. And now you've got a new fan base who looks at it as canon and revels in it. And then they had the Clone Wars TV, like, animated series. And, like, so this has actually been just a journey that's been going on for, like, over 20 years. Like, since Star Wars came out, it's been there was a long period where it was a positive journey because you had the original trilogy and then you had all these computer games that people really enjoyed. And then there was like this book series that came out of it. So there was always this great potential that people saw. And it was the potential that people, it wasn't just that they loved the series, it was that they loved the potential for the series to be something more than it was.
I think that's the problem. They're sort of projecting their attachment and their expectations on these things that will never match up. That's where it gets unhealthy, and that's why they're lashing back saying, "Oh, not canon," because it didn't line up with what they believed it should be. But I don't think you should be asking.
I don't think it's just that. Well, I think the reason that people are so against things now at the moment is because there's so much identity politics. Like identity politics and all of these external factors that people are talking about that don't seem to be like when you talk about the Phantom Menace and all of this stuff associated with Star Wars in the past. Like even the Mandalorian, there wasn't any sort of underlying political association with anything to do with the world that we live in now.
Do you think Rebels did?
I don't think so. No, not that I can remember. But it all seemed to like because Filoni and all his stuff is like homages to film. Like if there's any relation to the real world, it's other genres of film, not of things that are happening in the world today or the changes in people's perspective on life. It's all just like around the archetypes behind storytelling and all this sort of stuff. But now you've got this additional layer of the social engineering, where basically there's social engineering going on in the way that messaging is occurring and the change in which these things are occurring.
Well, the reason why I asked Rebels is that Sabine was Asian, Ezra is Middle Eastern sort of, and there was saw Che Guevara, whatever he is.
Che Guevara.
He was Forrest Whitaker, the black, take a black guy.
Yeah.
So it was bleeding in at that point, and Kathleen was there at that point, wasn't she?
No, but I mean, what like?
See the way that
you had Lando Calrissian in Empire Strikes Back.
The way that Red Letter Media looks at it is they say it's a diverse cast, but on the other side of it, you could argue, they're doing this on purpose for a point to make sure that it's a diverse cast to meet that checkbox.
But I mean, there's a difference between a diverse cast, right? And where the characters are saying, "Oh, thank goodness you're here. It's so great to have diversity now of people from other planets that we relate to more because we didn't have that beforehand."
You mean with the female stuff?
Stuff where, like the problem with the Acolyte, as an example, is just how like the actual characters themselves, who cares about, like, regardless of sexual identification, who cares? But the characters themselves, all that they talked about was like what they wanted, and they all acted like they were being ostracized in one way or another. But their underlying personality, their motivations, and all this sort of stuff was just awful. Like, they didn't care about other people. They only cared about themselves. They only reacted to things in very unrealistic ways if you want to identify with that person. Like these weren't identifiable characters, or like even,
I agree with
every character.
Side. I agree with that side, and that was really the lead writer. What was her name? Can't remember her name.
Headland.
Leslie Headland. That was her fault. I really put that blame on her. But like when you have a character like Plagueis, you can't get away with that stuff with him. You have to pick up your game writing when you're writing for him. What would she do with him? That's what I'm keen to see. Like you can't write a lesbian love story for Plagueis.
Well, you can. You can do it like he could be recently transitioned. Like I'm like, have you watched? Have you done anything about Dragon Age Veilguard?
I haven't watched any of the stuff. No.
That's very interesting. There's a plot line about the transitioning of one of the characters to non-binary, and the ostracism that person receives, and all of that sort of stuff. Which
done in a good way.
It's done it's like watching someone write their story as being a human being in a modern world today, in a fanciful fantasy world where people can shapeshift and do
Is it done in a good way though?
No, like the writing in it is really bad. Look it up. You can tell me if I'm wrong. but from what I've seen, it's pretty bad.
If it's not good, then I'm not going to bother.
Well, it's
like
just
if
an
that's the
example.
point, like it comes down to intention, and I've always said this: if your intention is to do that stuff for the political reason and not for your primary storytelling reason, then it's not going to be good. It's never going to end up good for you.
No. And that's basically, I think, the thing that people rail against with regards to Star Wars is that some of the stuff that is being introduced is overtly not related to the good of the plot or the story. Like
But how would Plagueis fall into that? I don't think it would, though. It would have been cool to see.
Well, it
some of
doesn't
this
have to. It doesn't,
because
like,
how he
for all
created,
like,
for instance, how he created the Force Dyad. What was that about? There's something interesting there to explore, isn't there? As a Star Wars fan,
there's a book that was written, which actually is really well liked, I think it's called Darth Plagueis.
Oh.
So there are a lot of people who really like the book. So I can see it being like a situation of you watching Rebels and then you watching Ahsoka, but instead you watching Rebels and then someone making a live action version of Rebels and it's terrible. Where they change the plot completely. And I think that's what a lot of the fear was towards this, was that they were going to do a really bad version of this character that was made very interesting in this book. I haven't read the book, but from what I've heard and seen, some people really liked the book and would rather consider that canon than a TV show that's not going to do it justice.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, you really have to. That's why I respect Filoni. Like, he even went and brought back the Bendu stuff that I never thought would see the light of day. I was joking with you about the Bergen Force, and then I'm watching Rebels, and they're talking about it. He's actually honored it in a way that made sense, and it wasn't. You didn't have to hit all the right marks. Like, it was just, you knew that this was a real nod to the creator, the original guy that sat down when he was in his 30s, and that was the first version of the second version of the script that he spent he took a year off to write it. It's kind of like that level of commitment to a character, commitment to the idea of what Star Wars
for
is.
A person's, it's a respect for the person's creation.
Yeah,
the creator's investment in it, and you didn't get that with things like the Acolyte, where the people are actually literally saying that it doesn't matter what was originally created. It's now an opportunity for us to make our own mark in the writing and write our own stories, regardless of
who said that? Leslie.
That history. Yeah.
When did she say that?
It's in one of the interviews.
In rebuttal to what people are criticizing her for.
It was basically just being very dismissive of what had come before, and I don't know the exact quote because there's been so much of it, but I did hear the quote, and it was pretty much dismissive of what came before.
Yeah, this is why she didn't get the round two. It's karma, isn't it?
Leslie Headland. Yeah, well, karma is not something that we necessarily see in today's day. But yeah. So when we talk about things like canon and stuff, I do get why people talk about this being canon, that being not canon, is that there are things that are probably closer to what they envisage as being Star Wars than other things, and it's a topic where people have invested quite a long period of their time. I mean, hell, we talk about it still, and we're old farts, so for all us saying let's not be too emotionally invested in it, we have spent a fair amount of time talking about it. So, like, I don't want to judge what other people say.
I would say that I am definitely emotionally invested in it because I love these characters, and like I do want to see more content. What I don't like is the fact that they're categorizing some content is not like worth your time let people decide, let them watch it, and then like
But
it's already.
everyone's done that. That's always been the case. We've done people have done that with everything.
But like when you label it as not canon, where it's just like it's got the Star Wars label on it. You go and watch it first.
But the canon thing, I think, for Star Wars that's a specific thing to Star Wars as well, because if you look at the history of Star
specifically
Wars,
they said not canon, don't bother.
For what?
To watch it. I was looking at the watch order, the list of things to watch, and like this guide said not canon, don't bother with it.
And what was the show?
I can't remember, but it was like
I didn't.
Well, I didn't even bother like spending too much time because that's quite harmful, isn't it? To not bother with the whole series when you're trying to figure out the watch order of like Star Wars TV shows.
If we're talking The Acolyte, I must admit that you're probably like, because if you think about it, if The Acolyte is something that comes as like before everything else, and you want to look at it from a time perspective, if you start with The Acolyte, you probably won't get past that series and you'll give up on Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, hey, why don't you get into Star Wars? Oh yeah, I hear there's lots of content for Star Wars. Where should I start? Should I start at the beginning? And you go, yeah, sure, start at the beginning. And they go, okay, so which is one that starts first? Oh, The Acolyte starts first. I'll start with that. Like, you can't really recommend a person starts there because they're not going to get into Star Wars after that.
Yeah, I wonder. I don't think the watch order was with that. I don't know if it was that. Maybe it was.
But if the watch order is from a time frame perspective, that starts the earliest.
Yeah. So don't watch The Acolyte at all. Like if you're telling people.
No. I wouldn't suggest people watch it. Not if they want to like get enjoyment out of a series, because it was a really poorly written series. Like it's very bad. I mean, there are other things like that people can be dissuaded from watching in other genres. Like I think people do some of that with things like, I don't know, The Walking Dead or something. Like there are some series that have a whole bunch of like offshoot series, and you can say, because that's what they are.
Like Fear of the Walking Dead and all that stuff, and like what is it?
Like I think some people say, "Oh, that's a good series. That's not a good series." It's like and that's.
I mean, if you're asking for that, but I'm saying the stuff where they're saying, like they're just trying to find out an honest answer about what order to watch stuff, and like these people are going in these forums and citing this. It's not the first time I've seen it. Like they're very vocal about what is real Star Wars and what's not real Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I think that's not unhealthy. I just don't think.
Look,
like if you're in a forum all day saying, okay, blah blah blah, this is downvote.
I think if you're in a forum, full stop.
Downvote everything that they don't agree with. That's not what the downvote's for. Not for obliterating someone else's content.
But I mean, toxicity. I don't think toxicity is a good place in any space. So, but in terms of if there was someone asking me for genuine recommendations of where to start in Star Wars and what series are worth watching,
well, I would say start with the original trilogy, right? That's where you all start. That's where it starts from. And then, like, the question was about the TV content specifically. Like, there's so much of it. Like, it's a genuine question. Where do I start? That's why I was looking. Like, do I watch Rebels or Bad Batch first? That was my question, because I had to start somewhere. And even though Bad Batch was before Rebels, like, does it actually matter? Yes, it does matter. Watch Rebels first, because you get the emotional impact of seeing Kanan come back after. That's the stuff that I'm asking about. I'm not asking for your toxic, it's not canon because, Yoda appeared in his underpants in this one and that can't possibly happen.
Well, if we're talking about stuff like that, yeah. I don't know. I guess
the
like
Bendu
because
stuff, they might say that's not canon, so don't watch.
yeah,
But clearly they haven't.
absolutely.
They
But
don't.
if you're
They know that it's in the
but if you're
original.
asking for a recommendation, you are going to get people that say that, aren't you? Like if you're saying, hey, if you're asking for advice, you're going to get all kinds of different viewpoints on
I'm
a
not saying
forum.
is it worth watching Rebels. I'm saying what's the correct order to watch all the TV series in Star Wars. What's the chronological, like you said,
Mm.
like what's the best order to watch it? It wasn't even chronological.
Well, no,
It's
if
just
you
the
ask
best order,
chronologically, then yeah,
but it's
best.
just
Yeah,
the best watch order. That's a common thing.
mm.
Like in in other things like Lord of the Rings. What's the best read order? For instance, do I read The Hobbit first, or do I read? That's
The
an
appendices,
opinion. Sorry.
the Silmarillion, the
Yeah, that's the
Silmarillion.
thing.
It would be.
Do you
Yeah,
start with that stuff?
yeah.
So it's the best
No, well, yeah,
order.
absolutely. Well, I would say don't watch The Hobbit. It's not canon.
Hobbit's not canon. Fuck that, man.
The series. I mean the movies. Do you remember the movies for the
The
Hobbit?
Bilbo stuff.
Like, yeah,
Uh
you know how it was a trilogy? How they
yeah.
turned The Hobbit into that children's book into a trilogy.
It was very fleshed out.
Fleshed out is one word. Uh, More like stretched out.
So you reckon it's not canon?
No, it's not.
Don't watch?
Especially well, the only part of
Don't bother?
the Hobbit movie series that's canon is the love story between the dwarf and the elf.
But don't bother with the Hobbit movies?
What I would love to see is a cut of the Hobbit movie that's made to the length, like one movie for the Hobbit, because there's so much content in there
I like the
in
Smaug
those
stuff.
films.
I don't remember it that well. The Smaug stuff was great, wasn't it?
Yeah, but there was just so much, like it was stretched so thin that you basically got the full Hobbit book in there. That they could have, you could do a cut of that's just the one movie that goes through most of the blows. I'm sure that someone's done it. But
This
watching
is my
all
point
three,
exactly, though. Why are you limiting yourself like that? Because you've got this vision
I'm
of
not.
what it should be,
I'm saying
but you got
this
three
is
movies, like from Peter
yeah.
Jackson, one of the best directors of our time. Like he's amazing. You don't agree, Peter Jackson?
I don't think he's one of the best directors of our time.
You don't. Why?
I think he directed three of the best movies of all time, but I don't think he's one of the best directors of all time.
Why?
King Kong. Well, because King Kong was painful. It was a painfully long film.
Okay, King
It was
Kong.
bloated. King Kong. Then there's the Hobbit trilogy, which I thought was like really just stretched and bloated and had some really
Have you
bad
seen
stuff.
Get Back?
What's Get Back?
Beatles documentary.
But that's a documentary.
He
I'm
directed it.
talking about but I'm not saying he's a bad director, but I'm not saying he's one of the best directors of all time.
Of our
Because
time, I said,
he's
not all
inconsistent.
time. Our time. Living.
Well, even of our time.
There's
But
not that
he's
many.
not directing. But he's not really directing that many movies, is he? Anymore.
Well, that's the thing.
He hasn't
No, he's
really.
not. But like
So he's
Lord of the
not really out
Rings,
of our time.
Lord of the Rings, Get
Oh, I
Back.
guess of our time, yeah. But
Like he knows what he's doing, and he's.
I haven't seen Get Back. Look, I'm not saying he's a terrible director, because he's directed some truly amazing films. But I don't think he's one of the best directors of our time, because I don't think he's consistent. Like if you like Christopher Nolan, I would consider one of the best directors of our time. some of even Steven Spielberg, some of his films have been like there's some people who, I don't know, I couldn't tell you who, apart from Christopher Nolan, who I think is pretty consistently great. I can't think of that many like Steven Spielberg's done some amazing films as well. But there were some of his later films weren't that great. Like War of the Worlds wasn't that great. But I don't know. I haven't thought about it. Who would you consider to be some of the greatest directors?
I would say Peter Jackson's up there. Peter Jackson definitely.
I feel like I'm pushing your buttons. I'm not trying to.
I don't know if you are. I'm just letting you talk.
No, Peter Jackson, I have loved some of his films. Like Frighteners, I really liked. I really liked the Lord of the Rings, obviously.
But I mean, to pull Lord of the Rings off, first of all, you need to know a hell of a fucking lot. Like, to pull that off, it's almost like it doesn't matter what you've done.
That was it. That's an impossible task. That was an impossible task, and to pull that off is just.
And I don't know, like he was limited by what the Hobbit's content was, but he almost did it again with the Hobbits. Like he pulled it off again. It's not a fluke. You can't have to be a good director to do that.
Pulled it off with the Hobbit. What do you mean?
The Hobbit movies, the trilogy, like he did twice. Like
I don't think that just.
But he was limited by the story. Like there's not enough content. He had to drag out this thing, and I think Rings of Power falls into that as well. Like there's not enough content, so they're like they're filling it out, but the world is still the same, and most of the techniques that he used are still the same.
Yeah, but I guess but that actually opens up an interesting question then. Say you're not the writer, but you're the director. If you direct a movie that's bad because of the writing, does it still make you a good director?
I think so, yeah. Because you're independent to that.
So it's...
Look at Irvin Krishna. He didn't write Empire Strikes Back, but he's a very unique director. Because Return of the Jedi doesn't look anything like Empire Strikes Back. It's unique to the director.
But Empire Strikes Back is...
Most of Chris Nolan stuff is written directed. I think that's why you're saying that he's God, because he writes and directs. But as a director, it's a very unique role.
Yeah, that's true.
Even Spielberg, he's like Schindler's List, he screen wrote it. You know, all of those hits of his, he had a hand in the writing as well. So it becomes a different thing when you're the writer and director.
Okay. Well, that's a fair enough point then. Yeah. That's a good point. So okay. But King Kong, man. What did you think of King Kong the movie?
That was 100% him just loving King Kong and just making a King Kong movie. That's all it was. With like huge actors like Naomi Watts.
But I don't doubt his love. Like but did he create a good film? Did you think King Kong was a good film?
Technically, like all the special effects and the acting was great. Like he managed it well, but like that's his role as a director. I don't know about the writing and other stuff.
But the edit. So would you what? Because things get edited as well. Would you include him with the editing?
In that film, I would say it's a weaker film of his, but it's still, the DNA is undeniable. Like he's still working towards Lord of the Rings at that point in his career. and it's a big stepping stone. All of the VFX stuff, he had only done like stop motion sort of effects. This
King
was
Kong
him
was
learning.
after.
Was
King
it?
Kong was after. Yeah, King Kong came after Lord of the Rings.
All right. All of 3.
Yeah. 2005.
When was the last Lord of the Rings?
I think it was 3. It was once a year, wasn't it? Yeah, it came out. Lord of the Rings came out every year.
Yeah, I can't explain it then. It's his love of that film. Then.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think.
But I
that's
don't
the
know,
thing
man.
too.
You'd like pull these weird things out of me, like King Kong as being a bad movie, and they expect me to defend it off the top of my head.
Well, you were like, sorry, but what you said, Peter Jackson, greatest director, one of the greatest
One of the
directors
greatest
of our
directors
time.
of our time.
Like,
I believe
I'm
that.
allowed to disagree, but I'm allowed to disagree, aren't I?
Yeah, you can. But
Do I have to? But I have to. I have to justify my position if that's the case. In which case, I have to provide examples. So
well,
I
I
wasn't
find it shocking that
attacking
you don't
you.
think that he
I wasn't
is.
attacking you with King Kong. It was just the example that made, like, there were things that he has done that have reduced my feeling of him as a great director. And it's not Lord of the Rings, and it's not some of the stuff that came before that. But after Lord of the Rings, there's been quite a consistent series of films that I didn't think were that great.
Yeah, fair enough.
That were like bloated and overlong. And I think that like, I feel like he wasn't as tight with his time after Lord of the Rings, because when he did Lord of the Rings, he also did all of the extended cuts, and people loved the extended cuts as well. But I think after that point, because he was like this director who could do no wrong, he was given the leniency to make some of the films he did quite bloated. And I think that was the thing about it that, to me, in terms of direction, that I thought was a bit was the problem with some of his films was this: he just tended to seem to he overindulged in the filmmaking, so that he didn't create tight films. So they did tend to go for quite a long time and be just full of stuff in it. And that, to me, it's not like his shot, though there are a few things as well with some of the way that he does certain shots as well, I'm not a big fan of. But that being said, Lord of the Rings is a masterpiece.
What sort of things are you
that is
talking
also,
about? I'm finding it hard to picture.
in terms of
What you don't
the
like
types of
about
images.
his... Yeah.
So there's one thing that he does sometimes to give a feeling of disorientation, where he does these low frames per second, like juddering, chaotic cut,
Oh, right. Yep.
to give you a feeling of disorientation.
Yep.
And I find that it's like detracts a bit from the rest of the beauty of the film that he's created. It's sort of it's jarring. It's meant to be jarring, but it doesn't feel like it's jarring in a good way.
Yeah, I know those shots. Yeah.
And
Fair
he
enough.
does other things as well, where he does a close up, like super close up, which can be quite effective, but sometimes misses the mark. And then there are other ones where there's over the top effects shots, where the situation of the effects takes away from the realism. Like in Lord of the Rings, some of the effects for like the fight scenes were amazing, but when it came to The Hobbit, some of it was cartoonish and comical. So there you had one that was based in some level of reality, except for the elves, where they're like, Legolas did some crazy stuff, and it was almost allowed to do that because everything else was based in reality. Whereas in Lord of the Rings, you had dwarves and things doing all of these crazy things and writing down like stuff that was in the book, but played up to a cartoonish level that it took out any feeling of realism. And
so do you
and
think
that's-
like someone like Ridley Scott, he's the only other director that I think can pull off that scale of
that's
stuff.
a good.
Is he?
That is a good example. Ridley Scott, great director, terrible writer.
But is he better than Peter Jackson? In your opinion? Because you
I
said
think so. Yeah,
oh,
I would say
Scott
Ridley Scott is a better director than Peter Jackson. Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense then.
That would be my because Ridley Scott, like just some of like what was it? Prometheus. Beautiful. Like there's a feeling of watching that movie that is just beautiful.
But it's also a
And-
tone thing. Like Ridley Scott
Yeah, the
takes a
tone of it.
but no, but he emphasizes a tone in all of his work. Like it's a very serious tone. Peter Jackson's not that. He started off with these ghouly sort of plasticine horror films, and like he does documentaries, he does serious films, he does comedies,
He does lots of different stuff. Yeah.
So there's different tones as well. Like you're not going to get like a very auteurish Ridley Scott experience with his films. You have to sort of.
That's true. That's true. So what you could say is that Peter Jackson has has experimented more than Ridley Scott in terms of movies with more tone. So because Peter Jackson, The Hobbit was a lot different tonally. I don't know. It was.
Well, for instance, that shot where it's that disjointed shot. I know that stuff from his early work. That's his Peter Jackson thing. That's his almost like his calling card.
Calling card, yeah.
But like no one else is doing that. It is like disorienting. Like because it takes you out of the film, but it's also one of his trademarks. So
it's one of it.
It's like that argument. You just keep doing that thing that you do because you like it.
Yeah. It might be that no one else likes it, but or it might be that it doesn't work. But just because, but if it's something that you identify with and you keep doing it, then would you say? Yeah, but would you say that it's legitimate? Like an example I can think of would be lens flare and what's his name?
JJ's lens flare.
Yeah, you knew. He knew exactly. Like you talk lens flare, that's his calling card. He has lens flare and like up the wazoo.
And he never really got rid of it, did he? Despite all the criticism.
That's his calling card. Yeah, so that's his calling card. So
okay, one last example then, because I think we can agree on this one. Ron Howard. Good, right?
Ron Howard. Yeah, I think so. Just remind me, he did the Hillbilly Elegy, Happy Days, the Andy Griffith Show.
As an actor, as a director, there.
Sorry, I'm looking up. I'm trying to remember the stuff that he's done. Do more recent.
Trying to find some common ground. Maybe it's not.
Yeah, but I do like. I'm not saying that I think that they're bad. Like, yeah, he's a good director. Yeah, okay, that's a good director. Like, I think the thing is right, and this is I think that I agree with you in that Peter Jackson's a great director, Ron Howard's a great director, Ridley Scott's a great director. It's just that they've made bad films.
Yeah, it's funny. If I actually look through Ron Howard's list, there's loads of bad films. There's loads.
Yeah, that's what I was just looking at. But he's also made movies that were critically acclaimed as well.
Yeah.
And it's the same. Like Peter Jackson is the same. It's like so, and same with Spielberg. And I think that I'll admit, I believe that I'm wrong because, like, I think you're right. I'm getting caught up in the idea of writing and directing versus directing. And so, Spielberg.
No, but it's fair enough. Like the things that you mentioned, those techniques that don't vibe with you, that's part of his direction style. That's him deciding to do that. And if you don't vibe with it, that's your entitlement.
But those are just things. They're idiosyncrasies. They're not the entirety of what he does.
Which boggles my mind a bit because Lord of the Rings is like kind of perfection to me in terms of filmmaking. Like that's like, if you've done that, I think you deservedly sit at the top almost.
I think
it was amazing. It was really, really like a shockingly good.
I know it is. I think I'll tell you what it is that makes me hesitate with regards to Peter Jackson than other directors like Ron Howard, Ridley Scott, Spielberg. The difference is with Peter Jackson is that I don't know what he would do with a film if you gave it to him. Like, I don't know what he would do with, like, pick some of the films that you have for, like, Spielberg, right? I don't know what Peter Jackson would do with Jurassic Park. I don't know what, I feel like the direction for Peter Jackson and the main...
Well, let's think of something that's not been made. What's the story that you love? Like just a story that hasn't been made yet.
All right. I've been getting into a lot of Brandon Sanderson books.
Yeah,
so
I hear that.
Really, truly awesome stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd have to.
What's the tone of that stuff? I don't know. I haven't been exposed to it.
It's fantasy.
Is it Game of Thrones tone though?
No, it's lighter, but it also has some truly. It's lighter and
Is that sort of like Magician, Raymond E. Feist type sort of?
Yeah,
kind of like that, right? Traditional fantasy.
It's all like no. I'm trying to think of the style.
I hear there's a bit of politics, like as well. Like he delves into the political side.
Look, he's a very I would say he's written some of the best best fantasy ever. And he's also written some stuff that's okay. But he is absolutely a prolific writer. Like, he's one of the most prolific writers of all time. Yeah. But like the Stormlight Archive, as an example, is phenomenal. And it is epic, but also full of interesting characters, full of interesting... Just the whole thing is excellent.
I hear it's really good.
So in terms of a director, I would...
But the reason why I'm asking about tone is that's the thing. You've got to really match it, don't you?
Yeah.
What is the tone of those?
And I think that's the reason that I would be hesitant to get Peter Jackson, because even though he would theoretically be a match for Lord of the Rings, the amount of...
For the Stormlight Archive, you mean?
Yeah. So let's say that if I was to pick a director, right, and I was to look at each of those directors, let's say, so if I look at what they did for Lord of the Rings, like, that wasn't just him that made that epic. But he was absolutely critical to its success. But the amount of talent that went into making the Lord of the Rings was just phenomenal. Like, they had artists who'd been doing it for their entire careers. You had so many people who'd spent so much of their entire lives dedicated to Tolkien, and they were brought into this thing to make it special. So, and I don't think that he could give that to another film. Like I don't because like he doesn't want that. I know that he doesn't. He said he doesn't want that. So I and so
But I think
I
what he
didn't
does
pick him
well
as a
though
drug
is
dealer.
he takes that, visceral experience of reading a battle and he translates it so well to screen in a way that's him. That's definitely him. The translation of those battles and that sort of the shots involved and like the lighting and what you don't show is just as important, and he's just mastered that aspect, which I don't think even Ridley Scott could do. Ridley Scott does an
Oh, well,
epic, like he'll do
did
the
you
epic.
watch Kingdom of Heaven?
I haven't, no. I'm
'Cause
just thinking
I
of
can't
Gladiator.
remember.
It's that sort of
Oh,
Scott.
Gladiator, but Gladiator was no. Gladiator was good though. That was really good.
Oh
Like they
yeah,
had a
but in
battle scene
terms
at the
of
beginning.
the style, like there's a definite Peter Jackson style to the battle, and then there's the Gladiator style to the battle, which is
Well, the
one is very
Gladiator.
blockbustery. I would say Ridley Scott favors the
Mm,
blockbuster style, whereas
mm.
Peter Jackson is very in touch with the fantasy style. There's the I don't know, the magic of
Oh
and
yeah, I see
the
what you mean.
emotion of those battles. There's like the humor
I
and
don't think you would get that. You probably
Ridley Scott
will.
wouldn't get it, right? The
It's
humor
hard to
in
say
particular.
because he hasn't done it, so it's hard to say whether you would get it. But I don't know. I think he probably could do a decent job of it with Peter Jackson. Yeah, there's more to that series than just the epic side of the fantasy. And that to me is like the important thing for a film in terms of direction is to be able to balance between the interpersonal, the personal, and the epic. And I guess he has done some really good stuff. Peter Jackson has done some really like
Well, the other
the
thing that
hardest thing is that it's Lord of the He hasn't done as many films as some of these other.
but I see that particular thing that he did with Lord of the Rings, and I see it echoed in Rings of Power. All the
Yeah,
good stuff in Rings of Power is
but he didn't direct.
borrowing.
He
No,
didn't
no,
do.
no. It's borrowing from him. They're
Mm,
directly referencing his stuff. They're stealing his
yeah.
stuff.
Oh yeah,
Um,
they're totally taking. They're absolutely trying
it
to get
wouldn't
that
exist
tone.
without Peter Jackson's head, though.
No,
Without that original thing.
no, no. It's a template. He created a template. That's very. That's actually a very good point. Yeah, he did. He created the Lord of the Rings. Peter Jackson defined a template for
I would even
fantasy.
argue that some of Game of Thrones, like the later, more epic stuff that we saw in the later seasons of Game of Thrones, that was leaning into that too.
Some of the Game of Thrones stuff was pretty awesome. Like, I know that the last season of Game of Thrones wasn't great from a tone, like a shifting of the character, but some of the shots in that were pretty amazing. Like the actual battle with the White Walkers.
Yeah, that's what I was
That
specifically
episode,
thinking of.
that was a freaking amazing battle sequence. Like,
But replace those White Walkers with orcs, and it's so almost shot for shot, isn't it? It's almost like very borrowed
no,
experience.
I don't. I think I might even disagree with you on that. It was darker. In Game of Thrones, it was darker because you actually something that Peter Jackson does is he shows more. Like Peter Jackson does, like it was something I noticed with some of the, like there were some things that he did in Lord of the Rings that was great, but it wasn't my vision, like what I would have originally envisioned for it. But that doesn't mean that it's bad. But he did show more. Like if you think of the Shelob lair and stuff, he shot a lot of stuff with a lot of. He shot dark spaces with a lot of light, so you
Yeah.
actually did see a lot. But the tone in
It
that
was
Game of
quite
Thrones,
dark, yeah. That I now remember the night.
it
It
was
was
specifically dark. It was like that was a choice to make it completely obscure.
Yeah, it's quite
and
unique,
that to me was beautifully done. That, like, to me, that, like, I don't remember seeing something like that. I actually want to see that episode again because it was that episode that made me think: are people really serious that it's as bad? That series was as bad as it was, and I get why, because it was the interpersonal stuff, it was the relationships and the plot and the pacing that was bad, but some of the visuals of that, well, all of the visuals really for Game of Thrones were amazing.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, all of the Game of Thrones battles were good, weren't they? Like, they were all iconic. Like,
Yeah.
the Battle of the Bastards.
Yeah.
Like, every one of those was deliberately shot a very specific way. Like, they even didn't have battles. Then you saw the aftermath, but every single one of those was epic. Like, people would be talking about it. Like, you remember the battle with the boats on where they were coming to King's Landing, the sea invasion of King's Landing, where they burned the boats, and just like this massive explosion and stuff. Like, in like there's so much, like, it was beautifully done.
Now that I think about it, I remember I was watching that a few times. It was very good the way it did. It was very silent. There was lots of darkness and emphasis on just the siege. It was like we are the light, and then just on the edge of that darkness, there was that very sinister. You didn't see much of it.
No.
But when you did, it was terrifying.
And then there was that scene where all of the corpses are just falling down into the castle, where it's just like bodies upon bodies, piles upon piles upon piles, and it's just like, this is impossible. I mean, the only problem that I had with, actually, when I think about that episode, was just that you didn't know really what was happening, because it seemed like at one point they're completely overrun, and other points, like, it was more staggered. Like, it looked like they'd basically been beaten at points, and then but then you'd see later and they're still fighting. So you were like, where that was probably.
I wonder if that's an edit thing, because they were sort of,
maybe
they had a lot of material. And they chopped it down into like such a short series. I wonder. I agree with that too. It was a confusing series, because weren't we also breaking off to different stories as well? It wasn't just one. Was it just one episode for the whole thing?
I think no. I think that one was just all one episode.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
But yeah, there were times when looked like basically the only thing was like it went from these people have already died to, oh, they're still fighting back, to, oh, how are they still alive, why are they in the castle but they're outside the castle. Like, there was a lot of displacement of location.
Yeah, I have to rewatch that stuff. It's good.
I'll see it again. But look, Matt, you are right you are pretty much right. So you've convinced me. Like, he is one of the best He is one of the greatest directors of our time.
Oh no, you're entitled to disagree, and the points that you gave were valid.
But I don't mind debating the point, and I'm always happy to concede when I'm wrong, because that's how you grow. But I think you're right, because when I think about it, it wasn't just. It was that he defined so much. He defined cinema in a lot of ways for that time.
We hadn't seen anything like that. It was done so magically well. Yeah. And I can't even think, like, good fantasy directors, they're a dime a dozen. You don't get that sort of thing. It's we're living in a lucky age, I think, with that. People are diving into it now with all the Game of Thrones stuff, Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Hopefully the Sanderson stuff, the Stormlight, I think they're working on it, aren't they? Some people are trying to get it going. I think some people are. Yeah.
I think that like they've sold licenses and licensing for it, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen. Some of this stuff has been talked about for a long time.
A lot of people are keen for it.
Yeah, some people
The
think it
Witcher.
would be better as an animated. Oh, yeah. What did you think of that?
I haven't watched it. Didn't bother.
Oh,
Don't
really?
bother. Not canon, don't bother.
Oh, why? Did you look on some forums and they told you not to watch it?
No, I haven't played the game yet. I actually want to play the game first.
Oh, fair enough.
It's a hard game. I'm not used to that sort of, that role, third person. I'm more of a first person shooter game.
Well, you know what you need to do? You need to play a bit of Helldivers 2.
I hear it's a good game, eh? Who plays that?
Yes. I don't know. Some loser.
Is it Slap Doldrum?
Slap Doldrum. But Slap Doldrum is always ready for a what was it? I want to keep saying Cad Bane, but it's not Cad Bane.
It's not Cad Bane.
It was Faz. It was Faz.
Faz Boo
Boo Boo. Faz Boo. Faz Boo Boo and Slap Doldrum.
Alright, should we call it? Yeah?
I think we should, yeah.
Alright, thanks everyone for tuning in.
Oh, did we have any? Did we?
No, Chris is not here.
Yeah, no worries. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for this philosophy session around stuff.
I'll change the name. It'll be something else on YouTube. So yeah, something now.
Copy.